Okay, folks, so welcome to the introduction to EduTyping. And what you're seeing here on the screen is the edutyping.com homepage. And if you have used EduTyping in the past or recently signed up for a free trial just to experiment with the software, to familiarize with what it contains, EduTyping includes 2 student curriculums that are separated and differentiated by grade level. There is EduTyping Junior, which is designed for elementary schools, K through 5 or K through 6. EduTyping Standard Edition, which is designed specifically for middle and high school level students. And then there is an administrator and instructor interface, which allows teachers and administrators to manage entire districts, schools, teachers, and students in classes within the teacher accounts. So what we will explore today is each of the components of EduTyping, the instructor software, the standard edition of the student software, as well as EduTyping Junior. So what students will do each day when they go to edutyping.com is they'll log on by clicking on the student login button, and instructors will log on by clicking on the instructor button, and administrators as well. What I will do is first demonstrate the student software, both the EduTyping Junior and Standard editions, and then we'll log into the instructor software and show you how you can customize your accounts for your students, where you can set preferences and customize the curriculum, create custom lessons, and a plethora of other features. So where I'm at right now is if I click on the student icon, login icon, that would bring me to the EduTyping student login screen. And with EduTyping accounts, all students will use the same license ID, which is assigned when we set up an account. And each student will have his or her own unique username and password. So I'm going to log into the EduTyping Junior software first, which is designed for K through 5 or K through 6. But please realize that the interfaces between the two are almost identical, but the curriculums are very, very different. So I will now log in to EduTyping Junior. Okay, and where that brings us is, it brings us to the home page, and you'll note here that the EduTyping Junior interface is designed to look and feel just like a website, so the learning curve for students is very, very short. They can start typing and begin learning how to keyboard within minutes of logging in. The name of the class or the name of the school can be customized, and this is a setting that teachers can input, and you can also upload your own custom logo or mascot for your school or for your school district. So what I'm going to do is walk you through the menu options that make up EduTyping Junior, and when we log in to show you EduTyping Standard Edition, you'll see that the interfaces, or what we call as the software skin, is very much the same. So students will work in a hierarchy fashion and move downward in the menu as they progress through the course. If I click on Course Lessons, that opens up a variety of different lessons for the student. The EduTyping Junior curriculum is designed to teach students how to keyboard in a non-traditional fashion, which means that we teach it by rows. So the first thing that they learn is how to keyboard on the middle row, and that's due to the fact that with younger students, their motor and dexterity skills are not quite as sophisticated as that of a middle school or high school student, so it's much easier for their finger reachers to stay on the same row. So that, for example, the first unit is they learn the middle row, and you'll see here I can now click on any lesson that I'd like. By default, I've enabled myself to be able to kind of move freely on the screen, but and this is our demo account, so it's been utilized quite often, so it's not quite as clean as what you'd normally see. But the students basically would have to complete each lesson in sequence as scheduled by the instructor, and I'll show you how you can customize this. Moving downward here, you'll notice that there's a Part A and a Part B to each lesson. So basically the first part introduces the new letters to the student, and then the part B is more reinforcement and practice with the letters that they learned in the part A's. So for example, a teacher could just enable all of the part A's if they didn't have a lot of dedicated time each day or each week to teaching keyboarding. So what I'll do here is also explain to you what the student sees versus what the instructor will see. The students are basically given immediate feedback, so you can see here that this lesson 3A has been completed, reviewing all the keys that they've learned prior to that, and their words per minute is displayed as well as their accuracy, and then this option of being able to redo a lesson is a preference that you can set by in the instructor software. And again, I've enabled myself to click anywhere, but by default students would have to complete all of lesson 3A before moving on to 3B, before moving on to 4A, etc. So what I'm going to do is just move on to practice this lesson 7B so you can see what the interface looks like. And you'll see here that the first screen that the students see is a set of animated hands that show exact proper finger placement and the finger reaches that are necessary. And this is designed for the student to actually mirror what they're seeing on the screen before they actually start typing. But when the student is ready to type, they click Begin Lesson. And this is the interface. The first screen is usually a couple of lines, and then it advances as the student progresses through the lesson. So right now we're on lesson 7B, exercise A, which is just a warm-up exercise. That's why it consists of only 2 lines. There are a total of 5 screens for this particular lesson. So once the student completes this screen, their real-time progress and word per minute score and accuracy is recorded both on the student screen as well as in the instructor portal. The timer will begin when I begin typing. There is a pause and a pause button which allows students to stop typing. Let's say they get called to the office, so they need to leave the room for whatever reason. They can click that, and then when they begin typing, it begins again. And all of these options that you're seeing here on the screen can be set by the instructor. So if you feel that the timer is a distraction to the student, that can be enabled or disabled. The overall lesson progress, words per minute, and accuracy is displayed here, and I can show and hide the animated hands that you see at the bottom. So I'll just begin typing so you can see how the interface works. It's very easy to read. The font size is a little bit larger for EduTyping Junior versus the EduTyping Standard Edition. But if I make a mistake, the next letter that I key must be the correct letter. So this disables students from being able to just hold down, for example, the letter K key at this point to just scroll through and finish a lesson in its entirety very quickly. And as you'll see in a moment, now I'm on a different screen, and the system has now begun recording the words per minute and accuracy scores. And something that's nice to know is that the system will save where the student leaves off. So if for any reason right now, if the bell were to ring and I had to leave school or go to a different class period, I could pick up where I left off the following day, as well as at home if you choose to assign homework to students. And I'll also note that EduTyping can be accessed from anywhere with internet connection. However, you can also disable or enable the student access at any time. So if you didn't want your students working from home, you can disable that with just one click of the mouse. So I'll go back to the main menu now that you've seen the interface. So here are the variety of different lessons that are able to be controlled by the instructor for students. So EduTyping Junior consists of 7 units, and then there are corresponding reinforcement lessons which can be required or not required based on what the instructor sets up, and these are designed to correlate with each unit. So you'll see that Unit 1 middle row here corresponds with Unit 1 of the course lessons here. And we also have a series of news articles that we update on a regular basis, so the content stays very fresh and does not become dated. These are done in-house and screened for appropriate content, so you never have to worry about the students typing something that's not appropriate. For example, this is about a first grader who invented a video game. And if I click on this, you'll note that these are really designed for students to utilize after they've learned the basic, all the alpha and numeric keys. So these would be appropriate for as students are progressing through the course. And that's a little bit about that. And again, they are also catered toward the age group of the student as well. Moving back to the main menu, the next option that you'll see here is custom lessons. And what custom lessons are, these can be designed by individual teachers, and you can upload your own content. So if you had weekly vocabulary words, for example, here's one that we did for this demo on elementary math terms. So you can utilize and embed the Common Core curriculum into keyboarding. You can do literacy and a variety of different articles. If you were teaching something about planets and science, you can upload your own content that correlates with what you're teaching. And these can be lists of words or series of articles. And what some schools are now doing, and teachers that we're seeing how the custom lessons is being utilized, is teachers will have their students do a writing assignment, for example, and then have it typed in Microsoft Word or some other word processing software, and then they'll select one or two each week to actually upload. So students who submit writing assignments can actually see their content live for their entire class or their entire school for them to type in. So, and I'll show you how you create those when we get into the instructor software. There are a series of timed writing tests which are designed to measure how students do under pressure, and these are especially useful for preparing students for online achievement tests, which are going to be coming to the United States in 2014. And students will be required to do a writing portion where they actually have to keyboard sentences. So time is kind of a critical essence. So these timed writings are very helpful for that. And what these do are just operate very similar to a course lesson, which we looked at before, except these are timed. And there are a series of 15-second, 30-second, and 1 minute. And then in the EduTyping Standard, it's a little bit more robust, and they last, there are 1 minute, 2 minute, 3, and 5 minutes. But these, again, all correlate with the course lessons. So after the students have completed Unit 1, the middle row, you can use the timed writings here to assess their ability to perform under pressure, as well as their words per minute and accuracy scores. Something that's very important with elementary level students is that they're given credit for the amount of time that they type. So what EduTyping will do is record the actual time that the student spends on their each typing screen. And it's important to note that the system doesn't track typing time activity for when the student's logged in, but it will only track the time that they actually spend typing. There are two placement tests, a pre-test and a post-test, and these are especially useful for measuring if you had, say, a 4th or a 5th grade or 6th grade or 7th grade class, and you want to find out, have the students typed before in the past. You can actually group students based on production level and how well they already come into the course with the ability to type. And these are recorded in the instructor software, so they're very useful for setting up your classes and putting students at different levels and setting different benchmarks, which I'll show you about shortly. There are a series of 15 games, and the games range from basic to advanced, and you can set up a game to only teach a certain number of keys or the entire keyboard based on what you've already learned. And rather than play the games right now, I want to point out to you that we can disable any of these games or the entire games section within the instructor software. And you can also enable, say, 3 out of 15 of the games or disable half of them. And oftentimes it's important to note that teachers utilize the typing games as a reward system. So for example, if you're having your students type every day, on Fridays you could reserve that for the last 20 minutes could be games. And the OpenType feature is set up just like a word processing screen, and you can set up a timer. You can have the backspace key disabled in this, but basically what this allows is for students to type freely, and you can utilize this as a warm-up screen where you could dictate a series of letters that the students are about to learn and verbalize them in class and have your students type them as they move along here. These can be printed and they can be saved, but again, it's not really a robust word processing screen. Obviously, it's just more or less a way for you to have your students type freely. They could do some writing assignments, but they wouldn't have to leave their EduTyping screens. So I'm going to X out of that. The My Progress section is a way for students to find out exactly where they are in the EduTyping course, and this will show them exactly what lessons have been completed, their speed and accuracy scores, how much time they spent typing, as well as the date that they completed the assignments. Okay, and if they haven't completed it, will show them exactly how much left of it they have. My problem keys will identify for students exactly what letters are giving them the most difficulty, and these are recorded for the instructor, and you can also then require them to go back and do the lessons that reinforce the letters that they're having difficulties with. And I'll show you where you can see that as well. And then our Getting Started and Learning How to Type screens are really helpful for introducing students where they should be placing their fingers on the keyboard, as well as their posture and technique. And there's a lot of nice little visuals in here that allow you to have your students see exactly how they should be sitting and the ergonomics and correct way to sit at a computer keyboard or workstation. And there are finger placement visuals, etc. So that's a little bit about the EduTyping Junior software. And what I'll do next is just log out here, and I'm going to log in quickly to the EduTyping Standard software and let you see what that looks like. And you'll see that it does look very similar as far as appearance and usability, because EduTyping is a K-12 solution. It is designed to grow with the student. So by switching from Junior or graduating from Junior to Standard, it's a natural progression that requires very little relearning. But what you'll notice, the biggest differences are that the course lessons for EduTyping Standard Edition, there are a lot more lessons involved because it's taught in a traditional manner. So whereas EduTyping Junior had 7 units, there are 3 units included with EduTyping Standard Edition. And I'll just click into a lesson so you can see that the interface is very similar, but the font size is a little bit smaller, so the students are required to type more characters on each screen, as well as they are required to learn how to keyboard in a more traditional fashion where they are reaching almost immediately after they learn the home row keys. But the interface is very similar. And I'll go back out here and point out a couple of the other notable differences between the two. The reinforcements, again, correlate with each of the units in the course lessons, and included in the EduTyping Standard Edition is a practice library which provides students with more reinforcement on actual articles, and the topics and themes that have been selected and utilized are those that are relevant and interesting to students at the middle school and high school level. So for example, if you wanted your students to type about cars, here is an article on the top 10 cars and what you need to know before you purchase a car. And most students at the high school, even middle school level, are very intrigued by getting their license and beginning to drive, as you know. And also included in the EduTyping Standard Edition are a series of in the news articles, and these are current articles again that are written in-house and screened for appropriate content. Here's one on last year's MTV Awards, and I haven't enabled them all, but there are literally like about 60 or 70 of these, so it's really an unlimited number of content areas that you can have your students keyboard. And so we'll click into the custom lessons, which again I've already gone over with you in the EduTyping Junior, but again you could have vocabulary words, new articles that the students write and you upload, or you can basically create your own curriculum by utilizing this feature. There are timed writings, and we have partial timed writings. That's what the letter P stands for there. I don't know if you can see it on your screen, but the partial timed writings again are designed to be able to assess students before they finish an entire unit. So this, for example, would be a 30-second timed writing on lessons 6 through 9, and as you progress through, the timed writings include more and more keys that the student has learned. And then we have a complete timed writing section where you have a series of 1-minute timed writings. There are 2-minute timed writings, 3 minutes, as well as 5 minutes. So there's really a lot of assessment tools that you can utilize. There are 2 placement tests included with Standard Edition, as well as a post-test. And then there are games as well, and the open type screen, and pretty much all the other features that I showed you in Junior are similar to those that are in EduTyping Junior. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to log into the instructor software, and again you access that by clicking right here on the login screen for the instructor, and I'm going to log into our demo account and show you what the instructor and admin interface looks like. So when you come to the home screen of the instructor software, there's information here about your license, the name of your school, etc., when your account expires, and how many licenses you have created versus those that are in use. And it's important to note that all of the licenses with EduTyping are transferable. So for example, if you teach by semester and you have 100 students first semester, those 100 licenses can be reused second semester. There's a series of downloadable user guide and curriculum maps for both EduTyping Standard Edition and the Junior Edition, and those are nothing more than PDFs that will allow you to get a kind of a visual roadmap of how to introduce the different sections that are included with the software that we just went through, and some assessment and benchmark recommendations. There is a letter that you can send home to parents if you're going to be requiring students to work from home. There's a downloadable certificate of completion, login cards, etc., and I'll show you these in a little while when we get into the classes tab. And over here is where we communicate with our customers on a regular basis. So anytime we have some information or we update a feature or add new content, we communicate that through this little area here. And what I'm going to do now is I'm logged in as an administrator. I'm going to switch over to become a teacher and show you where you'll spend a good amount of time is in the classes tab. So what you're seeing here is this is the classes page, which what I have set up under this account is several standard classes, EduTyping Standard Edition, and as well as as a couple of EduTyping Junior classes. So if you were to only have Junior or only Standard, you would only see one of the two. But what I'm going to walk you through is how to set up a new class, add students to that class, and then actually begin looking at data within each class. So to get started on the process of, if you're new to EduTyping, and I'll go through this rather quickly because I'm assuming most of you are already using the trial or are just here to learn more about the features, but you can create a new class by clicking on either the Junior or the Standard button. Create new standard class. So I'll add a standard class right now, and we'll call this period 5, and you can customize it however you'd like. I'll just put in period 5, Mrs. Jones. Here are the options that you can set, either now or you can always come back and edit these. But all of these different options have little help hover buttons that describe, or hover text that help you to know what each option does. For example, if I don't want my students to use the backspace key, which is a good practice because using the backspace key has students stop their hand position and they have to strike the backspace key, and it kind of breaks their rhythm. So by default this option is enabled where they can't use the backspace key. This is the option that I was describing before, this forced sequential course progression. By leaving this checked, your students will have to complete a lesson in its entirety before moving on to the next one. So rather than go through each one of these, they're pretty self-explanatory, but you can come in here and just take a look at the help text and it gives you a good description. So this is the one here that I discussed earlier. If I don't want my students to see the games, I just disable it and choose Save. So I'll choose Save, and you'll see in real time. This is the beautiful thing about the internet, is that, well, we've got kind of a, here we go. Okay, so the class has been added right here, and I'll show you how to add students to the period 5 Mrs. Jones class that I just set up here. It's important to know also that I can set preferences for an individual class, or I can also set preferences for all classes at one time. So, but what I'll do now is just add a few students to that. So you select the class that you want to add students to. Click Add Students, and you basically have 3 options. Option 1 is adding a block of students, and what this will do is the system will assign a username prefix and then a sequence number to each username so they're unique. And I'm going to use this method since it's the easiest to explain through a webinar. Add a single student is very simple. This is if you got a new student or you have a small class. You basically select the class that you want to add students to and give a username and a password, first name, last name, and the email field is optional, and you choose Create Student. It's a real quick method. And you can also utilize the abilities of Microsoft Excel to be able to set up a spreadsheet to import students. And I will note that you can do this at a teacher level, at a school level, and a district administrator could also import thousands of students to teachers' classes, all with one spreadsheet. So as long as the data can be exported from somewhere, and this is a pretty easy, simple process. And you can actually download a template that looks just like this and populate the data and then import the students. So what I'll do is I'm going to go to Add Students by a block of students, since that's the fastest way to kind of show you how quick students can be added. So I choose Add a Block of Students. I'll put students in the new class I just created. You select the number of students that are going to be in that class, and this is where you'll input a username prefix. So I could just do period 5. And this is an initial password that all students will use, and then the first time that they log in, they'll be required to update their names as well as their passwords. So that's what these 2 options here. On first login, students must change their passwords. On first login, students must enter their names. So I'm going to go ahead and create this student block. And it said that they were created successfully. So if I come back here to Manage Classes, my period 5 class now has 10 students in it, and if I double click into that class, you'll see that the system has used a username prefix of period 5 and then a hyphen and then a number. So I can go ahead, and I'm going to show you right now that I can log in as this period 5-1 student in my software. So I'll type in period 5-1 and the password of 123456, and now it prompts me to put in my name, and I can update my password, and when I choose Save, that information will now populate here, and I'll just refresh. And it should show up shortly. Sometimes it doesn't happen as quickly as we would hope. And there you go. On the screen now you're seeing the sample student has been added to the classes. And now what I'm going to do is go back to the Classes tab and show you how to set preferences for individual classes. So, let's say my Block 1 class or my Grade 3 class is a little bit different as far as skill level than another class. The nice thing about EduTyping is it does let you customize each class individually or globally. So I'll just work with my Block 1 class here, and you'll see that the preferences are identical for both EduTyping Junior as well as Standard. So what I'm showing you up top here can be done as well for the junior classes here. So if I click Preferences, you'll see that up top here I can change the name of the class, and I can also set any of those options that we were looking at earlier when we created a new class. We can change those, and then we would choose the Save button. So for example, you could disable games for the first month of class, and then after the first month you can come back in and enable it, and then students will have access to that section. Under Lessons, this is where what we were seeing over here a little while ago, this is what the student sees, and these are the lessons that you can enable or disable. So I could, for example, disable all of the Part 2s to a specific unit, and this is a pretty long dialog box because there are a lot of lessons included. But for example, if I didn't want my students to work on Unit 2 at all, I could just uncheck them all at one click. And this is the Unit 3, Reinforcement. All of these are viewable here, so you can see, in a more visual fashion what I'm looking at within the instructor software. There's the practice library articles, in the news articles, and then all the way down bottom are your custom lessons. By default, if you add a new custom lesson, which I'll show you how to do in a moment, it is not enabled, and that's just so that the instructor can be really sure that they want to make that live for students, and that's just so that in case there was something copy-pasted, and this has happened in the past, that the instructor grabbed off the internet and pasted into a custom lesson box and then saved it. We don't want to make that live until you screen the content to make sure that it's all appropriate for the classroom. So by default, you would have to come in here and manually enable a custom lesson, and I'll show you how to do that. So I'm going to cancel out of here. We also have a Games Preference button, and this actually allows you to disable or enable any specific games that you want your students to see or not see. Obviously, the ones that are checked will display, and those that are not will not be displayed. Under Grading, this is where you can or cannot, you can make the decision on whether or not you want to have letter grades assigned to students. So in the beginning of the course, if I want my students to earn the letter grade of an A, I could set, let's say that they had to meet at least type 30 words per minute. For a B, 25 to 29, and these work in ranges. A C would be 20 to 25, and a D for 15, and anything below 15 would be considered failing. And this word per minute deduction, what this does is this will deduct 1 word per every 1% of accuracy penalty that the student achieves. So, for example, if I have this words per minute deduction set to 1, I'll use a nice whole number because it's easy to understand. Now let's say I was typing and I typed 98% accuracy and I typed 34 words per minute. Well, 100 minus 98 is 2. So the system here would deduct 2 words per minute off of the 34. So the net score for the student would be 32 words per minute. So you can customize this and change these at any time too. So if you're working with students in the beginning of the course, you may want to set it to something like a half of word penalty for every 1% so that the student isn't over penalized, and then you can increase this as the semester or the school year progresses through. You can also change your benchmarks as far as the letter grades as well, and these will update in the student scores immediately once you make this change, and I'll show you how that affects what you'll be seeing shortly. You can also set benchmarks, and by default what benchmarks do basically is they will allow you to set minimum gross words per minute and minimum accuracy scores. So for example, if I was teaching 4th grade and at a minimum I wanted my students to be able to type at least 5 words per minute, or if it's a high school I want them to type at least 20 words per minute, if I set this and I choose save, my students that are working through a lesson, if they did not achieve the benchmark score that you set, they would be required to then redo that lesson, as well as for accuracy. So if I wanted my students to achieve at least, say, 90% accuracy with 20 words per minute, and I choose save, either one of these would force the student to have to redo the lesson. If I leave them both at 0, then the benchmark feature basically is disabled, because I would only have to type 1 word per minute in order to be able to move on, or at 0 accuracy. I can send my students messages. So if you are going to be absent or you need to attend a professional development session somewhere else and you're off site for a day, today class type lessons 1.A and 1.B. See you tomorrow. Okay, and you can specify how long you want that message displayed. So right now I can display it, just say until, say, September 5th. We'll choose save. And now you'll see if I log in as that class, or as a student in that class. I think this is the correct login. We should see that message, and here it is. So the student would actually be able to get messages delivered by the instructor. It's a nice little feature. I can also put, this is where you can deactivate students from being able to utilize EduTyping outside of school. I can choose this pause button, and you'll see the message paused in red. That would disallow students from being able to log in. And if I choose activate, that will allow them to come back in and be able to log in. These login cards are very useful in the beginning of a course after students have their assigned usernames and passwords. You can have this nice PDF show up that actually puts the students' names in, as well as the name of the teacher, the class name, the license ID, and then their unique username and password. So these are great to use if you have students that they can keep this on the inside of their notebook, or you can send it home with them, but it's designed for you to print and then cut them on the dotted lines. We also can print a class list, and you can also delete classes. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to actually go into a class so you can start to see what the student scores look like and how we track their data. When you get into each class, you have the ability to, for example, if I wanted to, it's the end of the course and I want to print a certificate of achievement for each student, and I didn't want to take the time to fill each one in, you can actually create a PDF file that includes all of the information and the date that you printed it already pre-populated on the certificate, which is nice. You can also move a student from one class to the next. So let's say that this student were switched to a different class period or even a different school within a district or a different teacher. You simply select the Move Students button and select the class that the student is transferred into. Okay, so now let's take a look at the actual student detail page. And what you see here on the screen is here's the student information. Okay, it's got the username and their name, password, the date they last logged in, And this is very helpful to have if you have assigned homework and your student said that he logged in. You can easily check to see whether or not that's an accurate statement, the class he's in, and then the addition. And if I want to change any of the student information, I can update their username, password, first name, last name, and then you can set individual defaults. So right now this student is following whatever you set for this entire class, but I can actually change that specifically for this student. It's very helpful, especially if you have a student who might be kind of a has a kind of a different skill level, or is a slower based learner. You can kind of customize some things for that student. And these are the most recent days that were logged in. This shows you when they started typing, the amount of time that's spent typing, as well as how many screens they were able to achieve. So this gives you a nice little snapshot. Down here under the progress section, this shows you the exact lesson that was completed, how much of each lesson was completed, how many times it took the student to achieve. If you have benchmarks set, it will tell you how many times it took they had to take that lesson in order to achieve the benchmark, their gross words per minute, the number of errors that they made over the total number of characters typed, which is how we got the percentage, and then their net speed, which is set by back over to classes. This is where if you choose grading, the word per minute deduction. This is for every 1% of penalty in accuracy, they'll deduct from the student's score. So in this particular case, the student grossed 35 words per minute, and their accuracy was 97%, so they yielded a net score of 33 words per minute. Here's the letter grade that was assigned and the day they last typed, and you can also get visual graphs to see student progress over time, and you can save and export the data. And then if a student had a really bad day and said, you know, I was upset, I couldn't type today for some reason, you can actually come in here and actually delete their progress for that particular lesson and then let them redo it. Okay, and again, these are every single lesson that's included. So once your student has continued to work through, you can really get a very detailed feedback on their progress. So moving over to reports, what this will allow a teacher to do is run a report on a specific date or dates. So if I want to run a report on, say, just today, or maybe from last week through the current date, you can pick your classes. So I'll do one on EduTyping Standard class, and when I click Filter, I can actually pick a specific class, so I don't get a whole bunch of data on the screen at one time. And then you select the section that you want to report on. I'll report on course lessons, and this will allow you to also filter down what lessons you'd like to see. And you can, again, you can check all or uncheck all. In this case, I'll just check the first 5 lessons. And then you can choose to have the system yield a very basic summary, which gives you an overall snapshot, or I can choose detail. I'll just run a summary. And I've only got a couple students in here, but this also allows you to further customize what columns you would like to actually see yielded. And I can change this to detail, and you'll see that I get even one more. You can get a lot more detail. And again, you can customize this to your liking and show exactly what you'd like to show. And you can also save these reports and export them as well, which is helpful. So I could export this as an Excel file or save it for future use. Under Curriculum, this is where you can view the entire EduTyping Standard curriculum as well as the EduTyping Junior curriculum, and I'll just click on that so you can see that it's interactive and it changes on the fly. So if I wanted to actually see what was in each one of those lessons in the student software, I can click on that lesson and it will show you the lesson title, and everywhere where you see a red heading underneath that represents an entire screen, which is very useful because you can really gauge and customize the amount of time you have to dedicate to keyboarding based on the content that's included with each lesson. I can also create my custom lessons in the curriculum area, which I had shown you before, which is right here. And we're going to go ahead and make one of those right now. So I'm going to create an EduTyping standard custom lesson, but it's exactly the same process for both junior and the standard edition. So I'll go to create custom lesson, and I'm going to make this one for my EduTyping standard classes. Right here you would type the title of the lesson. So let's say that we were doing one on vocabulary words for week ending September 5th, 2013. Oops, there's only a certain number of characters you can go up to, and I exceeded that, so I'll abbreviate that. There we go. There we go. Under here, this is where you would type the lesson description, and what that is when the student actually clicks on a custom lesson, it's the text that they read that's below the icon there. So we could say here, you will now type this week's vocab words. Okay, and then here is, maybe it's, let's say it's 15 words that they're typing or have to learn for, say, a quiz on Friday. You could put the first 5 words, and then you could list them here, and you could just, I'm just making these up off the top of my head, word 1, word 2, word 3, and I could add a new screen so that they would see these first 5 words on the first screen, and then the second screen could be the next 5 words, and I'll just type a couple here so we could get through this. Word 6, word 7, and word 8. And then I could put some text here that the students would see when they're finished. Congrats, you did a great job. Okay, and when I choose Save Lesson, it tells me that my custom lesson was created, and it says, please note the following: for your students to see this lesson, be sure the lesson is checked in the Lessons dialog box in the Classes page. So if I go back to Classes and I click whatever class that I want to see the lesson I just created, I have to go to Lessons. Then all the way down at the bottom is where your custom lessons are stored, and you'll see here this is the one I just created. So I have to click on that and then choose Save in order for me to view that lesson, for my students to be able to see that lesson. So what I'll do now is go log in as that student, and we'll be able to see that the lesson has been saved, and it should display. So let me hit back, and then I'm just going to refresh my screen. Sometimes it requires the students. Oh, there we go. So when I go now here to custom lessons, the vocab words that I just uploaded are there instantly for your students to keyboard. And this will track and grade them. Something that's important to note is that for custom lessons, you will have to be limited to the number of characters that you can use for each screen, and that's just so that our EduTyping system can accurately keep score and grade them. And there's the little congratulations message I just put up. So as you see here, back to custom lessons again, when I go to create custom lesson, it's important that you note here for EduTyping Standard Edition you can only use 55 characters, and for the EduTyping Junior Edition you can only use 33 characters per line. And we have a nice downloadable Word template that is actually very easy to use, and it allows you to start. So this is the EduTyping Junior downloadable one, and it will actually stop you from typing. So you could actually fill in this block, fill in another block, and continue to type as normal, and then just use this to copy paste the text into the screen that requires you to type. But if you see here, if I go past this, it turns red and tells you that you've exceeded the maximum. And then the last thing that I'll show you is the support tab, which allows you, I'm sorry, I skipped over the settings tab. The settings tab allows you to, this is where you can customize the name of your course or school. So I could put in ABC High School or Elementary School, and then I can upload a logo here. And when I choose Save, for each teacher, oops, I didn't choose Update. There we go. So there you go. And then when your students log in, that's what they would see. And then we also have our frequently asked questions, as well as the ability to submit a support ticket, which we encourage you to do. We have outstanding technical support that usually turnaround time is about 1 hour at maximum, as well as we have a 1-800 number as well, so to provide phone support. So that basically concludes today's webinar, and I want to thank everybody for their participation. And I'm going to see if anybody submitted any questions at this point. What I'll do is I'll read the question out loud, as well as hopefully answer the question to the best of my ability. So just checking to see if we do. Yeah, we do have some questions here. Just give me one moment. Okay. So the first question is there a way to have student take a timing and have it set in such a way that the student cannot retake the timing without permission? There currently is not that ability. You cannot have students not be able to take a timed writing test for a certain amount of time, but what you can do, a quick workaround, which there are many workarounds to limit the number of times a student can take the same timed writing, is you can come into your instructor software and come here and choose lessons. If, for example, today I wanted to give a timed writing, and I'm just scrolling down, I don't want to make anybody dizzy. For example, if I wanted my students to only take the timed writing on lessons 14 through 17 one time, or the timed writing on email etiquette, I can disable all of the timed writings and just enable that one for this particular class period or this week, and then come back to my instructor software and then disable that and enable another one. So that's a quick workaround. I'm not sure if it exactly answers the question, but another question that we have from our panel of participants. Just reading it here. Is there a way to transfer a student over from a standard class to a junior class for extra help with the basics? You can move students, so I can actually move a student from standard, and I just went into that. Right now I'm in the standard edition, and I'm going to move him over to junior or vice versa. The only thing to realize is if I move a student over to, say, EduTyping Junior from the standard, or to standard from junior, it says, warning, moving a student from junior class to a standard class or vice versa will erase all typing progress. So because the curriculums are different, the only thing that the system will retain is the student's username and password and first name and last name. It will not retain his or her scores. So that basically, I think, is all the questions. So I want to thank everybody for attending today, and I encourage you, if you have not done already, if you haven't done so already, we do have a free trial that is ongoing. It's a 90-day trial, and it gives you access to use EduTyping with up to 150 students, and it allows you to use it for 90 days. And if anybody is interested in placing an order, if you haven't done so already, we do have pricing information under our order tab, And there is also, we just added this recently, you can calculate and print out a price quote which downloads in PDF format. So I don't think there's any other questions that anyone has asked. So I want to thank you for your participation, and if you have any questions, please feel free to contact us. We have a contact form here at the website, as well as through our support tab when you're logged into the instructor software. So everybody have a wonderful day, and thank you for your attendance.